Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today is September 10th. As I promised you before in my previous video that I will go and see an immigration consultant here in Edmonton to answer all your questions about immigration to Canada. Today I have decided to make this video in English so all people can watch it. And I will make sure to put Kurdish subtitle under my video. If you have any more questions, please comment down below. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel. For now, let's go and see Carla. Before we start, I wanted to show you Carla's office and her license number, her certificates, where it says basically she can work as an immigration consultant in Canada. And she is a registered member. And that's her license. This is her office. That's Daniela's office. She's not there. I don't want to go in. And now we are good to go. Hello everyone. Today I am at Pathfinder Immigration Consultancy office in Edmonton. Today we are meeting Carla and Daniela, and they will talk about themselves for a few minutes. Hello Carla, hello Daniela. Start, if you could tell us about yourself and for how long you've been doing this job.
Well, I'm Carla Hess, and I'm an immigrant to Canada as well. I came to Canada almost 38 years ago. I was born and raised in Mexico. I came as a young adult, and one day I started doing this. That started in 1993. I've been an immigration consultant since then. We are regulated. We have our license since the profession became a licensed profession to make sure that you don't get taken advantage. It's a good thing to hire a licensed consultant. It's always a good thing. We've been in business for a very long time. The company originally started in 1975, but it was incorporated in 1993. And it's called Pathfinder Immigration Business Consulting.
Thank you so much. And you, Daniela?
My name is Daniela Siebert. I am originally from Germany. I immigrated to Canada in 2006. I came on a work permit first and then later immigrated through the Federal Skilled Worker Program. I started working here right after I got here, first as a customer service coordinator, and then in 2015 in April I became a regulated Canadian immigration consultant, and I specialize in express entry, provincial nominee programs, and any kind of temporary application from inside and outside of Canada, like work permits, study permits, and visitor records.
Thank you so much. So now, since I have a lot of questions for you ladies.
I can see.
Yes, it's been 1 month and everyone is waiting for this video for sure. So I will start with the first and most important question, which is there a guaranteed visa?
Absolutely not. There's no guarantees on any concept of immigration to Canada. It's all up to the visa officer that deals with your actual application. They need to follow the rules. What we do as consultants is to make sure that there is the least possible frame of error so that it would not get denied. And our idea is to be successful at it, but I cannot guarantee anything, ever.
Ever?
Ever.
And no one can guarantee?
No one.
No, a person tells you that they can guarantee that you get a visa or you get permanent residency, they are lying. Because it is not up to us to make the decision to grant the visa or permanent residency. It is up to Immigration Canada and up to the immigration officer processing the application.
Who has to follow the rules as well.
Yeah. Yes. So as an immigration consultant, what are your services for people if someone contacts you?
We provide them with guidance. We assess them whether they can immigrate or become a temporary resident, for example, a study permit, a work permit. Depending on the individual circumstances, we can tell you whether you qualify for this or qualify for that, or what you need to do to qualify if you don't qualify at this point. Immigration to Canada is a long drawn out process. It takes a long time, and sometimes you need to do some things ahead of time in order to be able to make it here.
Thank you. So, in generally speaking, what are some reasons that lead to rejection in visa? What are some errors that people might get a visa rejection?
Incomplete applications, missing documentation, supporting documentation. Sometimes, for example, when it comes to a study permit, that you don't have the sufficient funds to be able to support yourself and pay the tuition. When it comes to immigration, there's many factors, but mostly is missing information, or a big one would be that there's a criminal background in either of the family members, or possibly even medical conditions that would not be permitted to come to Canada.
So what's the first step when someone contacts you via email? Let's say someone from Iraq contacts you, says, hello, I am from Iraq, I want to immigrate to Canada. So what are your first step procedure?
My first email to them back, I thank them for contacting us, and then I explain a little bit about express entry, and I tell everybody if they haven't gotten a language exam, an IELTS exam, or one of the French exams yet, and if they haven't gotten an education credential assessment yet for their education, to not even bother. You cannot complete an express entry profile unless you have these documents. Even with the provincial programs, most provincial programs require a certain level of English, and it's really hard to do a proper assessment by guessing how good a person's English is. So I usually send them an email with links to the Immigration Canada website where they can find the information about the program, the specific program, because most people that are outside of Canada, they qualify under the Federal Skilled Worker Program. But in order to complete the express entry profile, it is mandatory to have the education credential assessment and to have an English exam with a certain level of English for that specific category, which is CLB7.
So it's a must, because some people are asking me, can we apply for a program without English language proficiency test? I always tell them that IELTS is very important. I wanted them to hear it from you.
Yeah, like I said, it is mandatory for most application streams for permanent residency. There is a few categories where there's no language exam. It's not mandatory, but you will always get points depending on which program we're talking about for the language. I tell them, okay, once you are done with your education credential assessment and your language exam, and if they have spouses, I tell them, go, your spouse has to do the language exam as well, get an education credential assessment, because you get points for it. It's not a whole lot of points,
but it helps.
But every point can make the difference.
Exactly.
Most of the time what I see, like if somebody has a bachelor degree, the Canadian equivalent is usually also at the same level. I haven't seen it often that it was like lower what it would be in Canada, but it really depends on the school and the education and the country you're from.
Yes, thank you. So my question is, can you give us brief introduction about express entry and how many categories are there in the program?
Okay, so express entry, a lot of people, they think express entry is an immigration category, but that's not the case. Express entry is the file management system for Immigration Canada to process the application intake. That gives them the ability to basically pick and choose the best people in the world, because if you have an education credential assessment and the language exam and you meet the requirements of the category, you can enter into the express entry pool. Within express entry, there's 4 different programs. One program is the Federal Skilled Worker class. Most people outside of Canada qualify for that category. The second program is called Canadian Experience Class. To qualify for that one, an applicant has to have 1 year of full-time work experience as a skilled worker in Canada. Then there's a third program called Federal Skilled Trades. Only certain occupations qualify for this program. and an applicant has to have either a job offer with a labor market impact assessment from a Canadian employer, or the applicant has to have the trade certificate from one of the provinces here in Canada. So most people, they have to be in Canada working here to qualify for that specific program. And then the third category is provincial nominees. Sorry. The fourth category is provincial nominees. So throughout Canada, we have the provinces and territories, and every province has their own program. For some programs, you need an employer. For most programs, for example, here in Alberta, you would not be able to apply to the program unless you're here on a work permit and you have an employer. But there's other provinces where employers are actively looking for people to recruit foreign workers and to help them support the application for permanent residency.
Thank you so much. So, is Pilot Atlantic program is different than Express Entry? Is it one of the categories, or it's totally different program?
No, it's a totally different program. It's also a federal program, so it's through Immigration Canada, but only certain provinces qualify, which is Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Prince Edward Island, and Newfoundland. There is certain requirements that have to be met, and in order to be eligible for the program, the applicant has to find an employer that is in one of these provinces.
The employers usually, well, not usually, they have to be registered with the Atlantic Pilot program. They need to pass the tests. They can't find local people to work in their companies. So they post their positions available in their individual provincial sites through the program, the pilot program. If you find an employer willing to support your application, you also need to qualify by way of education. You need to show that you have at least high school equivalency, so you will need to do the credential assessment. And you will also need to do an English exam with a Canadian language benchmark of 4. A minimum. Otherwise, you don't. Even if you find an employer, you will not qualify if you don't have those two things. You also have to have a certain amount of money to support yourself for the beginning when you first arrive. So that has to be shown up front. The number varies because depending on how many family members there are in your family unit. And then if you get approved, then you get to apply for permanent residency, and eventually you get your permanent residency in Canada.
Thank you so much. And another question is that Canadian government has launched a new program, Yukon Pilot program in Yukon Territory. Can you give us some information about that program?
The Yukon program is fairly new. It requires very little level of English exam. You would need to do an English exam. You would need to, there's only about 5 or 6 communities that participate in the Yukon program. You will need to find a job in those identified communities. You will not need, or the company will not need a labor market impact assessment to invite you to work for them. And then you can come and work for 2 years for them, and that would be what I call a stepping stone towards permanent residency down the road. It's not permanent residency right away, it's just a work permit to go to the Yukon and to those specific communities. It cannot be, the job is not allowed to be outside the communities, it needs to be a full-time job. Or you need to prove that you have experience, a little bit of work experience in what you're being offered, what you're doing.
Thank you. And another question is that a lot of people are asking, what's sponsorship visa? How can someone sponsor someone else from the original country, the origin?
There is counted ways that you can sponsor. One of them is by marrying a Canadian or permanent resident. Another one is you can sponsor your parents or your grandparents who live abroad and you are already a Canadian resident or citizen. You can sponsor a minor child that didn't come with you for whatever reasons, as long as it's a minor. And you can also, the spouse category, you can sponsor your common law spouse. That means you would need to prove that you have lived together for 1 year or longer in the last 2 years. Basically first come, first basis, but it only gets opened once a year.
Once a year?
Yes. You need to be a permanent resident for at least 3 years in order to show your income for the last 3 years, and the income is reflective of the amount of family members in your own family plus your parents that you're going to sponsor. You need to prove that you have enough income to be able to support them if they can't. That's one category. The same thing applies for the grandparents. When you do a spousal or common law sponsorship, you need to qualify and prove that the relationship is genuine and true, and not to abuse the system and obtain permanent residence by way of marriage and being a fraudulent marriage.
And I think it's very risky, because if you are planning to come to Canada through marriage and then you showed that person that you are really not in the marriage, you are into the PR, they can just sue you or deport you.
They can sue you. The deporting part is not there. I personally will not take a case if I think it's out of pure PR advantage intentions.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. And another question is that people with special needs, how they are treated in the application process. When they apply, do they need to mention that they are with special needs?
Person around the world that wants to come to Canada as an immigrant, you need to do what is called an immigration medical. Mm-hmm. And if there is some issues either by health or physical disability, mental disability, it needs to be assessed by the medical office, and they make the decision. And even if you qualify perfectly fine for everything else, but if a member of your family becomes inadmissible for medical reason, then the entire family will be refused, because of you're not going to leave your kid behind if you can't immigrate, if they can't immigrate, right?
Everyone has to be admissible.
Admissible,
yeah,
right,
to Canada.
So in those cases, they are basically done on a very individual case-by-case basis. Sometimes they ask for extra medical information, testing and things like that, the specialists' letters and assessments, to see what will the financial burden will be into the healthcare system, in the Canadian healthcare system, and they decide whether the person is admissible or inadmissible.
And let's go back to your services as consultants. Basically, if there is no guarantee visa, so your services are preparing the application forms correctly to that person and prepare everything for them and tell them, okay, now you are ready, you are going to the embassy. So does it affect the decision if someone applies for PR applies for one of the programs by himself or herself, or someone who's getting help from an immigration consultant? How much is the difference?
The expectation of hiring a professional is that the professional knows their way around the system, in the sense of putting an application together properly, that there will be the least amount of delays by not having submitted certain documentation, so that immigration doesn't have to go back and ask for this or that, or because the person forgot it. When you hire a professional, the expectation is going to be a professionally put together package. And we don't only do the application forms. Yes, that's part of what we do. However, part of our job is also to counsel you from the very beginning, whether you qualify or not, under what category you qualify best. If you don't, guide you through the process to maybe make Canada your long-term project, but eventually make it. And then once we get to the point where you qualify, then yes, make sure that all the documentation and supporting documentation, application forms, everything that needs to be done through the process is done completely and professionally, so that the officer in Immigration Canada doesn't have to spend a lot of time requesting further documentation. And that all require, immigration, it already takes a long time to process.
Right.
To on top of it all add more time to the average processing time.
That's correct.